We're concerned with varying and almost, violently divergent opinions about the legitimacy of the pandemic and the best solutions.
This past November, Christopher Walsko and a team of researchers from Oregon State University Cascades in Bend set out to better understand why people have such different attitudes when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic. Why do some people believe bad information that wrongly claims the virus is a hoax? And how do we improve trust between scientists, the government, and the public?
To become more resilient, to come together, if not with the same exact values, at least with a improved ability to cooperate and trust one another.
The researchers surveyed 520 participants across the country. They also conducted focus groups in Central Oregon. The study found overall, roughly 40% of people surveyed believe COVID-19 is no worse than the flu, and about 25% think the pandemic is likely a hoax.
So that was, on the one hand, surprising, but on the other hand, we did some digging into existing public opinion data, like through the Pew Research Center, and they're finding similar types of things.
The study found two specific communities were more likely to not trust medical and scientific establishments and hold these beliefs.
Republicans and those who lean libertarian or Republican tend to believe those hoax-type attitudes more than people who lean left. But it's not all that direction. So, for example, people of color also tend to believe more that COVID is a hoax.
Walsko says exposure to right-wing media outlets has played a role in shaping the attitudes of right-wing voters. However, he says distrust among people of color is likely the result of historical inequities in healthcare.
There's plenty of data that indicates that people of color are receiving worse healthcare in a variety of different ways. So, a general distrust of the healthcare system.
The study found those communities had similar attitudes regarding vaccinations. Walsko says the goal of the ongoing research is to help governments improve communication with the public so they can build trust where, historically, there hasn't been a lot.
But the long-term goal of our work is really to engage in this sort of mutual respect across cultural divides to improve the resilience of our democracy as a whole, and not to try to convince one group that they need to think more like the other.
Keely Chalmers, KGW News.